Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Oh my goodness, it's HeroQuest. I spent ages restoring this copy of HeroQuest, so it really does make sense that I should do at least one playthrough on the channel. So today I'm going to be running the third mission from the core game of HeroQuest, that is Lair of the Orc Warlord. And I am going to be predominantly using the UK rules, which are significantly different from the American rules. As we are playing through, I am sure any American viewers will notice quite a lot of differences. However, this is HeroQuest, and I don't think there are any two people in the world who play HeroQuest exactly the same way. The original rules book was a little bit fluffy, it didn't explain things in a huge amount of detail, lots of things were left open to interpretation, people added in their own rules and their own ideas. And for everybody who grew up playing HeroQuest, HeroQuest kind of grew up with them and became its own thing. I mean, even very simple things like treasure chests. In the original rules, it implies that searching for treasure in a room with a treasure chest enables you to open that treasure chest. However, some of the wording in certain missions and some of the layouts and the position of traps in certain missions suggest that you actually have to go adjacent to a treasure chest and open it specifically. And I know that in my youth I actually played that way. You had to specifically open a treasure chest using an action to do that. We're not going to be doing that today, we're just going to be treating treasure chests as part of a room search. Additionally, as I am running the game solo, I am going to be using Hasbro's new app to play Morcar for me. And of course, the app that they created is based on the American rules and the American map layouts. So we have a bit of a mishmash going on here on this video today, and sometimes I might be playing rules that don't necessarily tally up with how you might be playing rules. But anyway, enough of that, let's get started. We have 4 adventurers on our team. We have, of course, the classic lineup. We have the Barbarian, the Dwarf, the Elf, and the Wizard. And each hero gets one of these character cards. Up here it will tell you if you have any special abilities. The Barbarian does not have any special abilities other than the fact he's very hitty. And then down here we have the stats. We've got attack, defend, move, mind and body. And a difference here between the American version and the UK version, the characters do not start with any equipment cards, and any equipment bonuses are kind of rolled into their stats values here. So the Barbarian starts by throwing 3 combat dice, but you don't have to give him a broadsword card or anything like that. Here is our Dwarf character, and he has the special ability, once per turn he can remove any visible trap in the same room or passage, and traps work quite differently in the UK version to the American version. I will probably cover that if we meet any traps on our adventure. We then have our stats, attack 2 dice, defend 2 dice, move 2 dice, mind 3, body 7. Next we have our Elf, who gets a set of 3 spell cards. His stats are attack 2, defend 2, move 2, mind 4, body 6. When you are selecting spells, the way it works is the wizard will select 1 set of spells, and then the elf will select 1 set of spells, and then the wizard gets the remaining 2 sets. And for this playthrough, our elf has got the air spells. Finally, we have our wizard, who has the values attack 1, defend 2, move 2, mind 6, body 4, and of course he has the spell sets of fire, earth and water. And so our heroes delve into the dungeon. We have placed the starting tile and we have placed the heroes around it. In the UK version of the rules, you do place the heroes adjacent to the starting tile. I know that at least in the new edition from Hasbro, the heroes are supposed to start on that tile. And we read our opening spiel for Lair of the Orc Warlord. Prince Magnus has ordered that the Orc Warlord Ulag, who was responsible for the kidnapping of Sir Ragnar, should be sought out and killed. Whoever kills Ulag will be rewarded with 100 gold coins. Any treasure found in the stronghold may also be kept. Yep, we are going on a very heroic assassination mission. And our heroes will each activate in turn, and then Morcar will take his turn. And normally in this game you would roll 2 dice for movement, but in order to keep things a little bit brisk for this playthrough on the channel, I am rolling 1 dice and adding 6 to the result, so our heroes will always be moving at least 7 spaces. It's just to keep things going faster. So we're going to start by activating our Barbarian. We've rolled a 2, so we're moving 8 spaces. On our turn, we're effectively taking a movement and an action is usually attacking, searching for treasure, searching for traps, or casting a spell. So our Barbarian moves 1 space to the door. We open the door, which is a free action, and we will reveal what is on the other side based on what the Hasbro app tells us. So according to the app, This room has a table with 4 goblins in it. Of course, our barbarian is going to charge into the room and he is going to tackle one of these goblins. We will fight the goblin directly in front of us. The barbarian throws 3 combat dice. And he has rolled 2 skulls there. We now refer to the goblin character card to see how many dice we roll in defense. Here's the goblin reference card. You can see they move 10 squares, they attack with 2 dice, they defend with 1 dice, and they only have 1 body. And this is something to point out again for the American viewers. Every monster in this game has only 1 body point. So this goblin with its 1 defense dice is unable to soak 2 damage and will die. And unfortunately that will finish the barbarian's turn. Because he's attacked now, he cannot continue moving. And it's time for our stout dwarf to activate. And he has rolled a 6, that's a big move. And something to note about the UK rules for HeroQuest is there was a sense of competition between the players, I think more so than in the American version of the rules, because in the UK version there are a lot of rules that hint at little things you can do to other people. For example, many of the spells you can cast on other players, including things like the Ball of Flame. You can actually send another player to sleep with the sleep spell, and you can purposefully block heroes getting through your space. Normally, a hero can move through another hero's space, but only if that other hero allows it. So the person playing the barbarian here could, if they wanted to, block any other heroes from coming through the door. And that's something you can do to make sure that you get all of the loot and all of the bonuses. But of course I'm controlling all of these heroes, so our barbarian is going to happily allow the dwarf into the room to see if the dwarf can bash in another goblin skull. So our dwarf moves to there, and you can't see me doing it, but off screen I am tracking these movements on the Hasbro app, because that way the app will let me know if I've stepped on any traps and activated them. But we're fine, and our dwarf can hit this goblin. We throw 2 combat dice. And we have rolled 2 skulls, so again, a goblin with a defense of 1 and only 1 hit point is unable to block that kind of damage. Next up we have our elf. He has also rolled a 6. Unfortunately, despite that high roll, he doesn't have enough movement to reach the goblin because you are not allowed to move diagonally. So we're just going to move up behind the dwarf and let the dwarf protect us. If the elf really wanted to, he could cast a spell, but I don't think there's any point trying to cast spells on low-level goblins here. Also, normally he might be able to search, but you cannot search in a room with monsters present, so he's just going to wait there. And now it is the wizard's turn to activate, and the wizard is going to search. He's going to search the room that he started in for treasure. When we search for treasure, we draw the top card from our treasure deck. And we have found some gold. Amidst the clutter, the old rags, the greasy fur robes and soiled blankets, you find 25 gold coins. Record the money on the back of your character sheet. Lovely. And it should be noted that treasure card does not go back into the treasure deck. Only cards that reveal wandering monsters go back into the deck. So this means that as you go through an adventure, as you search, the likelihood of finding monsters increases and the likelihood of finding good treasure decreases. Anyway, we've now searched this room, so let's roll for movement. Just a 1, so 7 total. We will just pop our wizard there between the barbarian and the dwarf. It's the safest place to be. With that done, it's time for Morcar to take their turn. And as I am using the app will control what the monsters are going to do and will actually roll their attacks for me. However, I'm going to ignore what the app is doing and I'm just going to do all the dice rolling on camera so you can see what's going on. So first of all, the goblin adjacent to the barbarian is going to attack. He rolls 2 dice looking for skulls. He has rolled a single skull, so our barbarian has to defend. Our barbarian needs to defend 1 hit. Which he does. He has rolled the heroic shield and a skull, so that attack is deflected. Our second goblin is going to scurry around to attack the dwarf. Again, he rolls 2 dice. And again, he has rolled a single skull, that is a single hit. The dwarf defends with 2 dice. And he does block the attack. It's a new turn and it is time for the barbarian to activate. Of course he is stuck right next to this goblin, so he is going to start his turn by attacking with 3 combat dice. He has rolled 2 skulls, the goblin cannot defend that, the goblin dies. And now we roll for movement. We rolled a 2, giving us an 8 total. which is enough movement points to make it to the door. Now, one of the issues with HeroQuest is there is a tendency to play the game quite cagily. What you will do is you will kill all the monsters in a room, you will gather around the next door, you will open the next door so that everybody is ready to pile into the next room and fight the monsters again. That can be quite a boring way to play, and there isn't really any mechanisms in the game to encourage you to do anything differently. A lot of modern games have timers and things like that to keep you going, to keep you racing through the dungeon. HeroQuest is a much more laid back sort of a game. It wants you to take your time and explore and enjoy the dungeon. But we're going to keep things moving. The Barbarian is going to open the next door and see what lies beyond. So we move to there, open the door, and then we will refer to our app. The room we have revealed contains a fireplace and a single door out. It also contains, according to the app, an abomination, which means we meet a femur. Unfortunately, the Barbarian has already attacked this turn, so there's nothing he can do about that femur now. He does have one movement point left. He could retreat a space to let somebody else get involved, but he is the best person for taking damage because he has the most hit points, so it's better for him to stay blocking up the door, protecting his weaker allies. Let's move on to the Dwarf's turn instead, and of course the Dwarf is going to try and take down this Goblin. Unfortunately, he has completely fluffed it. He has rolled a shield and an evil shield. The best thing we can do now with the Dwarf is roll to move and get him out of the way so that the Elf can step forward and have a go at the Goblin instead. And we have rolled a 3 for the Dwarf, so we're going to move 9 spaces around the table. Now our Elf activates. I'm not going to bother rolling for movement because he's just going to advance 1 space and fight the Goblin. We have rolled a single skull, so our Goblin does get to roll a defense dice, looking for a black shield. Which he does not get, the Goblin dies. Finally, we have our Wizard, and he may as well search for treasure again. And he has found a gem. Tucked into the toe of an old boot, you find a valuable gem. The stone is worth 50 gold coins. Record the money on the back of your character sheet. And we will roll for movement. He's got a 1. We'll just get him in front of the Elf. Like so. It is now Morkar's turn, and our Femur needs to activate. Our Femur card says they attack with 3 dice. And we have rolled a single skull, so our Barbarian has to defend with 2 dice. And he rolls an evil shield, not a good shield, so our Barbarian does take damage. Our first hero has taken a hit point loss. He is down to 7 hit points. But it's now his turn, so he's going to retaliate with 3 dice. He has rolled 2 skulls, that's a good hit. Unfortunately, the Femur gets 3 dice to defend. And rolls 0 shields. Femurs only have a single hit point, so the Femur dies. Now our Barbarian still has a movement, so we will roll for movement, and because I did promise I was going to keep the game moving, we are going to move to the next door and open it. There is a risk in that because this room does look like the kind of room that might be trapped, and normally I would move in a hero and search for traps before moving around too much, but let's just go for it. We're going to move the Barbarian to the door and open it to see what is in the corridor beyond. We have rolled a 1, giving us a total move of 7. Knock knock. So we open the door and peer out, and we can see there is another door and that the end of the tunnel is blocked with rubble. And at this point, as we reveal this corridor, it is probably worth me briefly mentioning line of sight in this game because it is a little bit convoluted, it's a little bit confusing, and the way it works in combat is slightly different to how it works when you are exploring. Because when you open a door, if you are opening a door onto a room, you reveal everything in that room. If you are opening a door onto a corridor, you reveal everything in that corridor. Furthermore, you should reveal anything on squares that are within your line of sight, which means any square that you can draw a line from your square to that square without it being obstructed by anything. For example, if there was a door just here and I was standing here and I opened this door, I would place everything that is in this corridor here. However, because I'm standing here and I can draw an unobstructed line to some of these squares here, in this corridor, I would also place things in these squares, but not on these squares down here. It's pretty simple in play, but quite difficult to explain. Furthermore, when you are attacking at range or you are casting a spell, you have to have line of sight to your target. And the way it works is if you are in the same room as your target, then you will always have line of sight regardless of what is happening in that room. If you are in a different room or out in a corridor, then you have to be able to draw an unobstructed line of sight from anywhere on your square to anywhere on the target square. Again, relatively straightforward in play, but it's weird how the line of sight works, because it does create weird anomalies. For example, if the wizard opens a door to reveal a room full of monsters, he may not actually have line of sight to cast spells on all of those monsters while he is still on the other side of the door. Once he steps through the door, he will have line of sight to everything in the room. But anyway, I digress, let's carry on. Our Barbarian is going to press his luck somewhat. He has a few points of movement left. We are going to venture out into the corridor and just move to the T-junction. And once he is standing there, we can reveal everything in the next corridor running all up this edge of the board here. And we have a corridor which is blocked off at either end, but there is a closed door at the top. I haven't played this adventure for probably 30 years, and I can still remember some of this stuff, and I know that that door at the top isn't the way that I'm supposed to go, but I do know that there is some treasure up there. So we will definitely go up there to check that out. Meanwhile, we will activate our dwarf. He has rolled a 4. All I'm going to do with him is I'm going to move him up to there so he's standing next to the door, and then we are going to search. When you search, you have a choice. You either search for treasure or you search for traps and secret doors. I'm going to search for traps and secret doors, which means we don't draw from any card decks or anything. Instead, Morcar will refer to the adventure manual and tell us if we found anything. And there are no traps or secret doors in this room. Next up, our elf will activate. He has rolled a 1. We're just going to move him in to stand next to the dwarf, and then we're going to spend our action to search for treasure. We have found a potion of speed. Standing on a shelf, you see a dusty bottle. As you wipe it clean, you realise it is a potion of speed. You may drink the potion at any time. It will allow you to roll twice as many dice as usual the next time you move. The card is then discarded. So this card we keep in our possession for now. And now we have to activate our wizard. He gets 10 total. I think we'll just move him into the corridor and search for traps there. And according to the app, there are no traps or secret doors in this corridor. I should point out as well that in the UK rules, you can actually search the corridors for treasure, but I don't allow that. I don't think there would be that much treasure just floating around in the corridors. I think it would all be in rooms, so we only search for treasure in rooms when I play. Things are going swimmingly so far, but it's the Barbarian's turn to activate, and he wants to head up towards that door to see what he can find. He's rolled a 2, giving him a total of 8. Now, rather foolishly, he has walked all the way up that corridor without searching it for traps, but as it turns out, according to the app, we are lucky there are no traps there, and we have just enough movement to get to the door, and we will open it to see what is on the other side. And we have actually found the rather lovely weapon rack. I'm sure there will be something good on that. But we have also found our first orc and another femur. Still, that does end the Barbarian's turn. He is one space away from the closest monster, so he is not in range to attack, so we have to move on to the Dwarf's turn. The Dwarf is pretty much going to leave the Barbarian to it, and he is going to go and explore the other door. We are splitting the party, why not? He has rolled a 1, giving us a 7 total. A movement of 4 gets him to the door, and we will open it. And we have managed to find a small antechamber where 2 orcs were probably playing some poker or something. Let's go and introduce ourselves. We could, of course, stay out in the corridor, forcing them to come to us, and we could attack them one-on-one through the doorway, but let's not do that. We're a dwarf. Let's go knock in some greenskin skulls. 2 dice to attack, and we will attack the one that is directly in front of us. We have rolled a single skull. And if we look at the orc reference cards, we can see that they attack with 3 dice and defend with 2. Looking for 1 black shield, which we do get. Our orc survives. Well, next up we need to activate our elf, and our elf is going to go to lend some support to the Barbarian. He's rolled a 5, so that's easily enough to get him up adjacent to our Barbarian. And then finally we have to activate our wizard. And our wizard is going to move up adjacent to the dwarf, and then he is going to cast Rock Skin on the dwarf. There's no need to roll for the wizard's movement because as I'm adding 6 to the dice roll, he's definitely going to make that. And then we're casting this spell, Rock Skin. This spell may be cast on any one player. That player may then throw 2 extra combat dice in defense until the spell is broken. The spell is broken when that player is wounded. The spell is then discarded. So this should help to protect the dwarf from all those orc attacks. But that finishes the hero's turn, so we're going to start the Morcar turn by attacking the dwarf with the orc to the right of him. 3 dice looking for skulls. That's 2 skulls. Fortunately, because we have Rock Skin, we are rolling 4 dice in defense. We have blocked 1, and that means we take 1 wound and immediately lose that Rock Skin spell. That was a bit of a disaster. And now the second orc attacks with 3 dice. It's only 1 hit this time, but only 2 dice to defend. But we make it, we do it. We are rolling a surprising number of black shields, I have noticed. We now move to the top of the board, and it is time to attack the Barbarian. The app has actually started by activating the Orc and moving the Orc to attack the Barbarian. I think that's a ridiculous option, because if I was the Morcar player, I would absolutely charge the Femur forwards first, as he is more likely to cause damage on the Barbarian. So we're going to ignore the app, and we're going to move the Femur into attack instead. We squeeze the Femur in there. I'm sorry this is all happening right up in the top corner of the board. We won't be up there for much longer. 3 attack dice. 1 hit, and another 2 black shields. We roll 2 dice to defend. And we do block the damage. Considering we've just had to face quite heavy attacks, we haven't done too badly there. The Barbarian is now going to start his turn, and he is going to attack the Femur. 3 combat dice. He has rolled 1 hit, and the Femur gets 3 dice to defend. But it doesn't defend it. It rolls 2 skulls and a heroic shield. That does mean the Femur dies. I think the Barbarian's going to feel like his work is done there now. He is going to move back down towards where the dwarf is. That's a 2, giving him 8 total. Next up, our dwarf attacks the orc in front of him. 2 combat dice. He's rolled 1 hit. The orc gets 2 dice to defend. And does block the attack again. And honestly, I think he's just going to have to stay there and soak damage off those orcs to protect the wizard for now. I could move him out of the way and then the wizard could cast a fireball in there, but yikes. It's okay, the wizard has got a couple of healing spells. We can heal the dwarf if he takes too much damage. Anyway, it's time for the elf to activate, and he is going to move into the room. I'm not going to worry about rolling because he only needs 2 spaces to get there. And then we're just going to attack the orc with a regular sword attack. We're going to save our spells for now. 2 dice. 1 skull. The orc defends. But the orc does not roll an evil shield, and the orc is taken down. The elf showing the dwarf how it's done there. Now as for this wizard, I think the best thing he can do is just stay exactly where he is. So it's time for our dwarf to face some attacks. Attack 1. Oh, it's a big fluff, but again, lots of black shields. Second attack. It's another big fluff. Now as the Morcar player, I could move those orcs, but enemies aren't allowed to open doors, so the best they could do is back away a little bit, and all that's going to do is allow more heroes to get into the room to attack them, so they're going to stay exactly where they are. Unfortunately, that does mean the Barbarian's going to have a very boring turn. The best he can do is just move up to join his friends. But now it is time for the dwarf to activate, and he really needs to kill an orc now. Which he doesn't do. The dwarf is going to back out at this point. He's going to move back out, and we will allow the Barbarian to start attacking these orcs instead. The Barbarian is quite clearly on a roll, and the dwarf is not. He's just going to go and stand behind the Barbarian in the corridor looking sheepish. Now the elf is going to search for treasure in the room with the weapon rack. As this is a special room, there is a special location marked on the Morcar map. Rather than drawing a treasure card from the deck, we have to refer to the instructions for this particular mission. And it says, the weapons rack is well stocked and from its battered appearance, clearly well used. You find a staff weapon which allows you to attack diagonally with 1 attack die. Add the staff to your character sheet. Now this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, the staff is very different in the UK version of the rules to how it is in the American version of the rules. In the American version of the rules, it allows you to attack diagonally with 1 attack dice. In the UK version of the rules, the staff allows you to roll 2 combat dice in attack, and the staff may be used to attack diagonally, and it's pretty much the only weapon that the wizard can use. So this is a really useful item for the wizard because it gives him that extra combat dice because he normally only attacks with 1 combat dice, and also gives him the ability to attack diagonally. That means he can stay relatively safe behind his friends while still being able to attack. However, I have also just cross-referenced the original version of the mission from the UK version of the game, and it isn't even a staff you find in this room. In the UK version of this mission, you find a spear, and the spear can't be used by the wizard at all, but it grants 2 attack dice, a diagonal attack, and can also be thrown as a 1-use ranged attack. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to stick with the UK version of the mission, and I'm going to give the elf a spear. And now he's done that, he needs to run away, he needs to go and join his friends. Next up we have the wizard. He's rolled a 4, that's fine, he's going to go and stand behind the dwarf. It is time for our orcs to activate. We will activate the first one, he's going to charge down the barbarian. He rolls 3 dice for this. 1 hit, which the barbarian does not defend, he takes his 2nd wound. It's not a problem, our wizard has a couple of healing spells. Our second orc is just going to move up to the door to stop him from getting swamped by all of the heroes at once. And now our mighty barbarian attacks. 3 dice. That's 3 skulls. That is showing the dwarf how it's done. We kill that orc instantly. And then he's just going to use 2 movement points to move to the other side of the door to make some space. Next up is the dwarf. The dwarf is going to charge back into combat with the orc. He is going to attack with 2 dice. And he has rolled a single skull, so the orc does have a chance to defend. But this time the orc's luck does not hold, and the orc is defeated. Next up we have our elf. He rolls a 4 for movement, giving him 10 total. He has moved into the room, hugging the wall, and he is just going to search for traps and secret doors, just to be sure. And there is nothing to be found. I'm not surprised, really. Let's move up our wizard. That's a 4. Our wizard is going to move to there, and he may as well search for treasure. And we have found some holy water, discarded and forgotten in a corner of the room. You find a vial of holy water. You may use the holy water instead of attacking. It will kill any undead creature, skeleton, zombie, or mummy. Discard after use. That's pretty amazing. We're back round to the barbarian. The barbarian wants to get a good roll and get into the next room. He's rolled a 2. It's 4 movement points to the door. We open the door and see what is beyond. We have found a room with a cupboard. I bet there's something good in there. And we have also found a couple of cowardly goblins who obviously heard that scuffle with the dwarf and the orcs next door, but decided not to go and help. Well, that's gone badly for them because the barbarian is now going to go and say hello. The barbarian moves to there, bravely risking the presence of any traps, but the app says I'm okay, and then he attacks with 3 dice. We've only rolled a single skull. The goblin does have a chance to defend. But does not. The goblin is killed. Next up we activate the dwarf. He gets a 5, which is easily enough to get into the room to fight that other goblin. We'll stand down there in the corner out the way. And we attack. And once again, our dwarvish friend completely fluffs his attack roll. He is really having a bad day. But worry not, our elf friend is here. He'll sort things out. He's rolled a 1, giving him a total move of 7. And we are going to move there, so we are standing diagonally adjacent to the goblin because we now have a spear and we can stab at him diagonally. 2 dice. And it's another miss. This really is a poor show, guys. Let's send the wizard in to attack. He only attacks with 1 dice, but it's only a goblin. What's the worst that can happen? 1 dice to attack, looking for a skull. No. I think the goblin's probably going to attack my wizard. 2 dice. 2 skulls. The wizard defends with 2 dice. And defends neither, taking 2 wounds. The wizard only has 2 hit points left. That is why you don't rush into fight with anything when you're the wizard. Fortunately, it's time for the Barbarian to activate. He's only going to need to move 2 spaces. He's going to go and stand in front of the door, stab the goblin in the back. 2 skulls, that's more than enough to kill the goblin. That finishes up that, so it's now the Dwarf's turn. The Dwarf is going to move forward 1 space, so he's next to the Barbarian, and then he is going to search for traps and secret doors. The reason being, that cupboard does seem just a little bit too tempting. It feels like there might be something nasty in there. So we move up there next to our mate, and then we search for traps and secret doors. And according to the app, we find nothing. It's now the elf's turn, and he may as well search for treasure. I'm sure there's something in the cupboard. And we have found a potion of healing in the cupboard which restores up to 4 lost body points when consumed. The app also says I find 24 gold coins in the cupboard. Moving on, it's the wizard's turn, and the wizard has taken some damage, and it really is quite scary as soon as he takes any damage because he's so close to death as soon as he takes even a single point of damage. So we are going to cast Water of Healing on ourselves. This spell may be cast on any one player. It will restore up to 4 body points that have been lost. The spell is then discarded. So that takes us back up to our starting value of 4 hit points. And because nobody can get through the door, that's how we have to end the turn. So we start with the Barbarian's turn, and he is going to open the door. And we have revealed a right royal rumble here. 3 orcs and a femur. The Barbarian is going to make a beeline for the femur, I think. We're rolling 3 dice for this. And we have rolled 2 skulls. The femur gets 3 dice in defense, so there is a chance it will survive. But it does not. It rolls 1 black shield and 2 heroic shields, so the femur dies. That's a really good start for us. Next we activate the dwarf. Didn't really need to roll that because we only needed to go 3 spaces to get to the orc in the corner. And we attack with 2 dice. 1 hit. The orc defends. And it does defend again. That dwarf really cannot cut a break. Next the elf moves into the room. And the elf is going to cast Tempest on the orc next to him. Tempest says a small tempest is created which envelops 1 monster or player of your choice. That monster or player will then miss his next turn. The spell is then discarded. That's just going to give me a little bit of breathing space. We're now going to move the wizard in, and the wizard is going to try and blast another one of these orcs as well. It's a bit of a squeeze, but in he goes. Now remember, because the wizard is in the room, he can see every monster in that room, regardless of what else is in the way. So he has free reign to cast a spell on anything in that room, and he is going to cast Ball of Flame on this orc. Ball of Flame states this spell may be cast at any one monster or player. It will inflict 2 points of body damage. The victim may roll 2 dice. For each shield he rolls, he may reduce the damage by 1. The spell is then discarded. So as long as we don't roll 2 black shields with this, the orc will die. And we don't roll any black shields, so that orc is toast. That finishes our turn, so it is time for Morcar to activate his single orc that he is free to activate. Both the dwarf and the barbarian have the same defense and the same number of hit points remaining, but the barbarian is the slightly bigger threat, so we'll try to put some more damage on him. But it's a complete miss. The other orc, of course, is under the effects of a tempest, so does nothing. And it's now time for the barbarian to activate. The barbarian is going to move in front of the door and attack the orc that was under the effects of a tempest. We just won't open that door for now. I don't think we're ready for more monsters to come steamrolling us. So we're rolling 3 combat dice. And we have rolled 2 skulls. Orcs do get 2 dice to defend, so there is a chance he will survive. We do have to roll. No, nothing. That orc is gone. Next up we have our dwarf. He's going to try yet again to kill this orc. 1 hit. The orc can potentially survive this again. But it doesn't. Finally, the dwarf manages to get a kill. And then he is going to take a movement just to move around adjacent to the barbarian. Next up we have the elf. The elf is going to move 2 spaces to get adjacent to the barbarian as well, and then may as well search for treasure. We have to draw a card from the treasure deck. And oh no, we have found a trap. The stone beneath your foot begins to give way, and all too late you realise it is a trap. You fall into a pit and lose 1 body point. You may climb out and move as normal on your next turn. The pit then closes. Return this card to the treasure pile. The elf is down to 5 hit points. But it's fine, we press on. We're going to activate our wizard, he's just going to move up behind the barbarian, and we will leave it at that for his turn. And now we start a new round with the barbarian player, who is of course going to open this door. Uh-oh, we're in trouble. We have found a Chaos Warrior, who is a bodyguard for the mighty Ulag. There are also a couple of goblins, but thankfully none of them are blocking the doorway. Our barbarian completely ignores the goblins, he's not bothered about those, he is going straight for the Chaos Warrior. We have rolled 2 skulls. Unfortunately, Chaos Warriors roll 4 dice in defense, so he does have a decent chance of blocking this damage. But he does not, he rolls 2 heroic shields, which means we do take down the Chaos Warrior. Next up, the Dwarf activates. The Dwarf is just going to try and take out one of the goblins because he's been having a really rough time, and I don't think he is up for taking on Ulag himself. Ulag, by the way, attacks with 4 dice and defends with 5. So we'll just move the Dwarf to there and attack that goblin with 2 dice. 1 hit, the goblin does get to defend. And he blocks the damage. That Dwarf just needs to go home, take up being a farmer or something, because the heroic life is not for him. Now our elf is going to stay outside the room because he's going to cast the spell Genie. And unlike other spells, Genie does not require line of sight, it targets anywhere on the board. It says, this spell conjures up a genie who will do one of the following: open any door on the board, the room's contents should be put out, or attack anyone on the board. He will attack only once with 5 combat dice, the spell is then discarded. So we are going to put a 5 dice attack on Ulag from the next room. 5 dice, let's do it. Well, that's 3, and we get 1 more. So we'll re-roll that black shield. 3 total, and Ulag defends with 5 dice as well. He's blocked 1, he does get 1 more dice to roll, but he can't of course block 2 skulls with 1 dice, so Ulag goes down, our genie defeats him. And that means our elf will be awarded with 100 gold coins for killing Ulag, if he survives to get out. Next up, we have the wizard. He gets to move a total of 7. As we have killed Ulag at this point, we can safely assume the adventure is pretty much over, so I don't think we need to worry too much about conserving spells, so our wizard's going to go into the room and blast one of these goblins with a Fire of Wrath. Looking at the Fire of Wrath spell, it says this spell may be cast on any one monster or player anywhere on the board. It will seek out your enemy and inflict 1 body point of damage unless your opponent can roll a shield on 1 combat die. So again, this was another spell like the Genie where I didn't need line of sight. But never mind, our goblin gets to roll 1 dice to defend. And it does not. The wizard kills the goblin. And that finishes that turn. Our sneaky little goblin has a movement of 10 squares. He is obviously going to go and attack the wizard, just out of spite really. At this point, none of the heroes can really die, I don't think. He rolls his 2 dice to attack. And gets 1 hit. The wizard gets to defend with 2 dice. And he does indeed defend. As always, we start the hero's turn with the barbarian. He has rolled a 2, giving him a total of 8. We're going to ignore that goblin for now. We know that the other heroes can deal with him. We're going to move around him. We're not allowed to move through him. But we do have enough movement points to make it, regardless, to the other door. And of course, we will open that door to see what is beyond. And it looks like this is the end of the line because there are no doors out of this room. There is just a single treasure chest. And a single treasure chest in an otherwise empty room. That's gotta be a trap. We have 1 movement point left for our barbarian. We're going to step inside the room and search for traps and secret doors. There are no secret doors, but there is indeed a trap. Right in front of the treasure chest. Now here's a part of the rules where I think there's quite a divergence between the UK and US rules, because in the US rules, dealing with traps is a little bit more complicated and you can only really disarm them before they've been activated. In the UK rules, if you search for traps and you reveal a pit trap, you actually take the pit trap token and you place it on the board anyway, even though it hasn't been activated yet, and it becomes a permanent thing that blocks your route unless you jump over it. But you can actually disarm the trap at any point. If you have a toolkit or if you are the dwarf, you can just move adjacent to one of these tiles and remove them from the board. But that does finish the barbarian's turn, and now it's time for the dwarf to try and regain a small amount of honour by killing this goblin. 2 combat dice. For crying out loud, do something. 1 hit, the goblin does get to defend. And this time, it does succeed. This time our dwarf does kill the goblin, but then he is stabbing him in the back. Next up, our elf activates. He's rolled a 6, that's a big 12, that's going to be enough to get to the treasure chest. Now here, of course, again, we see that interesting thing that I mentioned at the very beginning of this playthrough about treasure chests. The way this mission is set up, they have put a pit trap directly in front of the treasure chest, which implies you have to actually move adjacent to the treasure chest to open it. However, that is not the way the rules work. The rules state that if I just enter this room and search for treasure, I will be able to see what is going on in that treasure chest. So it's weird because the map implies you have to be adjacent, the rules imply you don't. Anyway, let's see what we've found. Now this is interesting because, as with all the other times I've searched, I have first hit the search button on the Hasbro app. I was expecting it to say what was in the treasure chest, but instead it told me to draw a treasure card. So instead I have referenced back to the original UK adventure book, and the UK adventure book says that there is indeed something in the treasure chest. It actually contains 100 gold coins. Furthermore, there is no pit trap in the UK version of this adventure game. Instead, it's the treasure chest itself which is trapped, and if you try to search for treasure before searching for traps, the trap goes off in the treasure chest and you take damage. There's no pit trap at all. I'm going to add 100 gold pieces to my elf's character sheet as per the UK rules. And that is it. There is nowhere left to explore in this map. Technically, an adventure doesn't end until all the heroes leave, but there really is no point retracing your steps to the stairwell in a completely empty dungeon. We can at this point say that our heroes have done a sterling job, except for the dwarf, and they have killed Ulag, bravely killed him from the adjacent room by sending in a genie to do the work for them, and they have been rewarded. And that's it. That is the end of Mission 3, Lair of the Orc Warlord. Chalk up a win for the, I guess, the good guys? And wow, what a blast from the past this was. Overall, how did we do? Well, the Barbarian didn't find any treasure, he took 2 wounds but killed a bucket load of greenskins, so he had a good day. The Dwarf didn't find any treasure, didn't get to disarm any traps, really didn't kill much of anything, and had a terrible time. He took a single wound as well. The elf had a fabulous time. He only took a single wound, but he found a potion of speed, he found a fancy new spear, he found a potion of healing, he also found 24 gold and an additional 100 gold in the treasure chest, and was awarded 100 gold for landing the killing blow on Ulag. Finally, we have the wizard. The wizard did take some damage, but recovered that loss through a spell. He found some holy water, which will help in another mission down the line. He also found a gem worth 50 gold and 25 gold in coins. So he had a good day too. And I'll tell you who else had a good day. I did, playing this game again. I think there are a few things that I would do differently next time. I did the dice rolling thing where you have a 6 as standard and then just add an extra d6 to that, and that does surprisingly take away a lot of the strategy of the game. This isn't a strategy heavy game, but character placement is key. You always have that risk of rolling a double 1 and not being able to get out of the way of an attack, or to be able to get into range of an enemy to attack, and you need to position your characters accordingly to take into account those swings of fortune and misfortune. And if you're always rolling at least a 7, that takes away a lot of that element of the game. So that's something I wouldn't normally do. I did it for this video just to keep things moving along more quickly, but yes, if I was playing the game properly, I definitely wouldn't have a fixed dice roll, because it just takes away one of the biggest strategy elements of a game that is already quite light on strategy. Also, I have to admit, I'm not too keen on the Hasbro app. I think it's a great thing for people who want to play the game solo, but it's just a little bit too fiddly for me. I thought that before, but I've tried it in this playthrough again, and yeah, it really is quite fiddly. And also, because of the differences in rules and the differences in mission layouts, it means you also have to do quite a lot of fudging to make it work with the European version of the game, which is obviously what I have here. Spells work differently, traps work differently, monsters have different number of hit points, the maps are laid out differently. Looking at the way that the map is laid out in the app compared to the UK adventure book, there are significant differences in how many monsters are in the rooms, where the monsters are placed, and even where furniture is. Other than that, I guess the only other thing I've got to say is, as I've mentioned so many times on this channel, HeroQuest is really important to me. It is a big part of my childhood, a big part of my love of gaming. It was one of the most special Christmas gifts I ever received, and I love it dearly. And this particular adventure is one that I remember so clearly from when I was young. I remember playing this as the heroes, with my older brother playing as Morcar, and I could remember that whole game and how it played out. And I remember my older brother's frustration when Ulag finally turned up and he still only had 1 body point, the same as all the rest of the monsters, and he felt that Ulag needed to be much more powerful and imposing. And he was a little bit frustrated by that, but I just had a blast, and that's a really fond memory for me, and we have recreated that memory to a certain degree here today. It's not the same, it's never going to be the same, but wow, it was special. If you have stuck with the video, if you've got to this point in the video, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here, but that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.